Welcome. We're good. Yay. Don't we love Zoom? So thank you everybody for coming. Today,
You know,
huh? Okay. Okay, we're good. So we're going to pay tribute to our friend Phil. And I'm glad that everybody has come today. We have a lot of people here representing many areas of his life, and very pleased that his family's been able to come, and Nancy's here as well. And I also want to thank the Writers Place. We are doing this in partnership with the Writers Place as well. So I was just going to open us up and say welcome. Mary Frances is going to welcome you too and say a few words about Phil. And then I'll go into some housekeeping stuff before we kick into the program.
Hi, everybody. I just want to welcome you from the Writers Place, and we're really happy to be able to do this together today. I first met Phil at an American Philological meeting where he was reading poems. And this would have been in the early 80s. Then I saw him again the next year at another one of those American Philological meetings, and he was reading again. And we talked briefly, and he told me he was going to start setting up a reading series with Don Blevins, and they were going to call it Riverfront Readings, and they were going to use the Artist Coalition building down in the city market on the river. So in that capacity, for several years, he gave so many writers the opportunity to read and to meet other writers and to help to form a writing community where we could all get to know each other. And as one of the founding members of the Writers Place, he continued that community going out of his way to bring in new readers, give people new opportunities. And he invited people to go out after readings. He invited people to his house. He shared his whole life with many of us. And in addition, I worked with Phil on Poutpourri magazine in several different capacities. And when Greg's father passed away, Phil was the first one at the door with a plant and a piece of pottery. And Phil also loved art, and so he went to all of Greg's openings and he bought some of Greg's art. So he was a champion supporter, and I will always remember him fondly. Phyllis, I'm going to turn it back to you now.
Okay, thank you, Mary Frances. I want to do a couple other thank yous that I just in my rush to get us going didn't thank. I wanted to thank Carrie Unrain for helping us with the baskets, and Allison Reamer for putting together those beautiful baskets of Phil's for auction. And Carl has done a PowerPoint, which you'll see in a minute. And I cannot go any further without saying thank you to the Riverfront Committee, who has carried on Phil's legacy since 2005. And this year it was great. We were able to feature local, regional, national, and international writers because of Zoom. So we've kind of expanded a little this year with Riverfront. So his legacy lives on in Riverfront for sure. So for the first part of this event, we're going to hear from, I think, the Kansas City, Kansas Community College. I'll have to check to see if Audrey is here. I'm not sure if she's here or not. Then we'll do some tributes from some friends and colleagues and Phil's family. And then we'll go into the open mic reading where people have signed up to read and announce the basket winners and socialize at the end if people would like to stay for a little bit. So I put into the chat how you can donate to the scholarship fund. This fund goes for students at the Kansas City, Kansas Community College, where Phil taught for years. So there's an online way to donate, and I also put in the snail mail information as well. Let's go ahead and start with the tribute. Is Audrey Alexander, are you here? So doesn't look like she is here. So Carl, why don't you go ahead and do the PowerPoint? This is a PowerPoint that that Carl put together, that people submitted pictures and quotes and other writings about Phil. Carl. That was wonderful.
And I will put that on the web at some point so that people can go look at it. I know that might have gone through kind of quickly and some of those.
Hey, I really appreciate it. It was wonderful seeing all those pictures and people. And Kevin, you had to, I don't know how I forgot about the canoe trip. If you don't know about the canoe trip, if you stick around for the chat, we have a story to tell. So it was pretty harrowing. A bunch of poets on a canoe trip, you know, that wasn't gonna bode very well. So
Phil
anyway.
Miller near water, not a good idea.
Yeah, it was something else. Okay, so thank you for that, Carl. And now we have several folks who are going to talk about Phil and their relationship with them and what they think about Phil. And we're going to start with Bob Stewart.
All right, well, thank you very much. And thanks, Carl. It was fun to see pictures, those old pictures, Barbara Christ.
Right.
And McKinley. My goodness. And I would like to give out a hello to Nancy, old friend Nancy. I haven't seen you in a long time, so hello to you. I was thinking that Phil was a really terrific poet and a great artist. But I think that the real reason that everybody is gathered here 10 years after his death to honor him is largely because he was such a gracious fellow. And in that regard, I thought I would read just a little bit of a tribute that I published in New Letters for Phil, which tells something about how I knew him. Phil Miller called me at home. I published this, by the way, in 2011. Phil Miller called me at home one night about 25 years ago, so it'll be 35 now, to explain that he and another fellow, Don Irving Blevins, planned to start a reading series in the River Key. I barely knew Phil then, and could not at first figure out as I listened why he called me. I ran my own series in another part of town, Midwest Poet Series, featuring mostly out-of-town writers. But if I had known Phil better on that night, I would have picked up more quickly the nature of his call, the tone of his voice, the quality of his character. He was being courteous. He wanted to make sure that I would not take his new series as competition and intrusion. He was asking my approval. Even as I thought this gesture unnecessary, certainly strange, I felt touched by its sweetness and, yes, flattered. I would learn, however, that Phil always operated with others in mind. He generally would not attend a party after the reading of a visiting writer unless the whole auditorium were invited. He was grumblingly democratic, considerate of everyone, especially the outsiders, egalitarian to the core. What happened to mine? He repressed stridency in normal conversation, but let him read his poems, and one would hear the voice that howled in his head. He drove each poem so one could hear the hoofbeats, stressed cadences, syntactic repetition. The force of his reading could focus, maybe frighten an audience. As in the conclusion to Ghost in Late Autumn, and I'll read a little bit of that poem. I mean the notion of flesh I have left, for now I can walk right through you. Couldn't scare you if I wanted, though you're haunted enough by the shades of ash and bone coloring the horizon, by shadows lean as Cassius, as you watch the fall of fall, as you could find in the bones of bare trees a connection or two, a pattern for you or even me to navigate by. Though the cat knows better, or the ghost sitting and watching beside you, too close for comfort. The ghost sits beside us too close for comfort. Yet Phil Miller seemed to gather force as he aged, publishing poems in journals small and large, such as the Georgia Review and Poetry Magazine. And I found it tremendously heartening how he worked and he wrote right to the end. And if students benefiting from the Phil Miller Scholarship can learn something of his character, of the character of its namesake, I should say, we will all be well served. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bob. That was wonderful. And yes, the Democratic, yes, he would not go to parties, not unless everybody was invited. And when we were students, you know, that felt really inclusive to us, right? So we're like, you know, so it was very nice. So the next person up to read is Eve Ott, or to do a tribute.
Okay, I'd like to just address Phil's relationship a little more with Riverfront, which he founded, as has already been stated. That was in 1986, guys, and we're still going strong. So I think that's a true tribute to Phil. And actually, there are some founding members of Riverfront Reading that met first on the Riverfront at the Artists Coalition, and then later at the Writers' Place in our beloved castle on Pennsylvania, and most recently at 31 West 31st, where we had live readings. May they return soon. On the other hand, it's great to be able to have so many people from so far away attendees, so pluses and minuses. I want to especially thank Phyllis Becker, who keeps us in line, which is about as easy a task as herding cats. And also Kathy Allen was one of the original people who, Kathy embodies the intellectual integrity and the straight from the shoulder honesty that Phil always showed too. And Carl Bettis joined shortly after the founding, but without Carl, we wouldn't have been able to do any of our virtual readings, including this one, because I don't think any of us could have figured it out on ourselves, by ourselves. So thank you, Carl. We at Riverfront always try to, and also in keeping with Phil's vision, we have established authors who read wonderful poetry and fiction. However, we always include new voices in our programming. And many people, I don't know how many here, but many people have had their very first Kansas City reading at a Riverfront event, including myself. And it was back at the Artists Coalition many moons ago. So it's been very important to all of us. And some of our recent new voices are going on to publish frequently and broadly. And so the beat definitely goes on. Phil was a marvelous poet, in my opinion. He had a way of taking everyday phrases and exploding them to become so inclusive and to contain so much punch. And he was also a wonderful friend and a great mentor to so many people. It's very hard to believe we lost him 10 whole years ago, way too young and way too soon. I'd like to conclude with reading one of Phil's poems, followed by one of mine. They're both very short, so don't be alarmed. First, Phil's, Heaven. No smoking here, it dulls your halo. Only the tinkle of synthesized harp music piped in. Hell, you say? But look at all the smiling faces. A cloud for you, a cloud for me. Think of it floating forever, hanging around for good. And that, to me, that's what I meant by that ordinary thing that he just hits you with, and I love. He does it repeatedly in a lot of his work, and it's something that I just love about his poetry. And this one is mine. On the shelf, the leaves of the cottonwood flutter in the breeze that turns the pages of the book left open on the chair. From beginning to middle, but no story until the end.
Namaste.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eve. I so appreciate that. And also, just to mention, we have several other Riverfront Committee members. Sylvia Koffler, Kevin Barth has joined us from Seattle. He was with the Riverfront Committee. And we have new members like Michelle Cloud and Beth Gully and James Binger. So, yeah, we already mentioned Kathy. So just, we really try to keep it moving and keep it fresh. So thank you, Eve. Next up is Gloria Vando.
Thank you, Phyllis, and the Riverfront community for continuing to bring us all together to honor our dear Phil Miller. There's so much to say about him, my adopted kid brother, but I think I'll focus on what impressed me the most. Aside from his extraordinary, or should I maybe say haunting poems, Phil was a tireless promoter of poetry and poets. Or I should say, yes, that's it. He just was. I truly believe he could not enter a room without envisioning it filled with poets reading to an audience. And voila, he would make it happen. Days later, we'd be inhabiting that very room with a Riverfront poetry reading. It's amazing. We read everywhere, with music also, at cafes, bookstores, galleries, libraries, schools, any place that could accommodate a sizable audience. But at the end of each reading, we had to leave because it was borrowed space. I can honestly say Phil was the major inspiration for the founding of the Writers' Place, which finally gave Kansas City's poets and writers a place of their own. In addition, Phil was intent on preserving these performances on tape, capturing the moment, keeping it alive for future generations to enjoy. He also co-founded a magazine, The Same, to share and preserve artists' works in print. And I must add, he did all this with Nancy's unwavering support and help. She was there every step of the way. Thank you. One of my memorable experiences with Phil was co-editing 2 poetry anthologies. Chance of a Ghost, that was Phil's title, which we laughed over. And In the Black, in the Red, poems of profit and loss, which I still would like to publish. It's as relevant today as it was 10 years ago, and contains yet another ghost poem by Phil, The Ghost of the Great Depression. In fact, after reading all the ghost poems Phil wrote, I'm inclined to think he was trying to tell us something, that he's still here, lurking behind the curtains, or among a crowd of passersby, or getting into movie theaters free straight through the walls, or haunting the late autumn landscapes. And if you ever feel someone walking right through you, you'll know just who it is, our favorite poet, Phil Miller. Thank you.
Thank you, Gloria. That was lovely. Thank you so much. So next we have Megan.
Hi, everyone. In looking at the audience today, I think I'm the one that has known Phil the longest. I looked back at old Quivira literary magazines, which was a literary magazine at Poutpourri State University. And Phil first shows up in the 1963 and 1964 issue.
Wow.
And I would have been about, I think, 8 years old at the time. And he showed up, and actually not as a poet or fiction, but as an exposition of E.E. Cummings' poem, Buffalo Bill. But in the next issue, he does have some poems. And usually at our house, my dad was Keith Denniston, my mom, Constance Denniston. We always had students over to our house. And so I remember as a little kid, having Phil and Linda over there, probably once a week or once every 2 weeks at least. It was, you know, that was kind of the way things were. And I remember Linda being pregnant, I think first with Kevin and then with Darren in Emporia. And they sat around and drank and smoked and talked about campus politics and literature and a lot of political things, because in the mid to late 60s, Emporia was starting to have protest marches about race and about the Vietnam War. And I remember Phil being involved in, you know, helping some of the protests as well as writing. After that, you know, Phil became a lifelong friend, and we, you know, my parents kept in touch with him when he was in Maryland, and, you know, later on up at the Fool Killer Theater, we went up and did readings there. So they became lifelong friends with the Millers, and then later with Nancy. And so we miss him very much. And to end, I looked back at some of his early poems in Quivira. And sometimes you look at a student's poem, you think, wow, he was okay, but he got a lot better later on, which Phil did. But his student poems are actually quite marvelous too. So this is a poem from, I think, either 1964 or 1965, called A Portrait of a Pink Lady. She sits softly as a cloud floating high and fluffy. Cream is her color, an orangish glow dusted carefully on each cheek. One lily hand touches her gilded hair. One snow white hand rests upon the scarlet bar booth seat. Across the table, a tiny light burns and dances, sparkling red in her two blue eyes. Preoccupied, she stares into a dark window at the left, where the pane reflects a pale face staring back. Low tones across the table remind her it is time. Tinkling a laugh, she colors slightly, touching two locks with one white finger. Then she quickly finishes her Pink Lady. So a great poem from early Phil. So thank you. And like I said, it's sad to think it was 10 years ago, but he was a great poet and a great friend, and we miss him still.
Thank you, Megan. That was lovely. What a great choice of poem. And by the way, your earrings, I had to mention those earrings. Those are the bomb.
Yeah, I got my Halloween done.
Yeah, you are ready. Also, just to hear about his time in Emporia and how important and informative that was in his life. It's what was really nice to hear that as well. Okay, so now Mary Frances is going to read some words from Polly Swafford and his Poutpourri days.
All right. This is what Polly has to say. Poutpourri, a magazine of the literary arts, was started in 1989 when my husband Herman suggested we start a literary magazine. For more than a decade, Phil was on the ground floor in helping Poutpourri grow from a locally distributed tabloid style paper to a slick magazine format that was distributed to all 50 states and more than 27 countries. He was a longtime board member and the humanities editor. He organized writing forums and ensured that they went off without a hitch. He and Herman would explore many ideas as the publications and programs evolved. Phil was always there to help. He truly was a key reason that Poutpourri was successful for so long.
Thank you, Mary Frances. And I'm going to go a little bit off script because I want to make sure I give an opportunity to our guest from New York and New Jersey to just, if they had anything they wanted to say, that would be Joel or Melinda. If you wanted to talk a little bit after he left us and joined you all, do you have anything you want to add to his story and tribute? You don't have to, I'm putting you on the spot there.
Okay,
It's
that's fine.
okay.
Melinda,
Joel, you want to go first?
ladies first. Go ahead, Melinda.
Okay. Okay. I just wanted to say, I just wanted to thank everybody for being here for Phil, because my collection of poems, my full-length collection, just came out last month, and I dedicated this book to Phil and also to two other editors in New York that I know Joel knows real well too, Martin Mitchell and Nick Johnson. And these three men, they were just amazing. They were just so supportive of all us poets in New York City. And you know, we got published in the same Big City Lit, and Martin Mitchell was, you know, they're all, I don't know if the three amigos or the three, I don't know, but I will read the memorial for oh, now I'm getting nervous, but I'll just read. In memory of Mike Steinberg, Nick Johnson, Martin Mitchell, and Phil Miller, who dedicated their lives to writing and made these poems possible, because we lost them all around the same time, you know, so it's been very tough these past 10 years with losing these people.
Thank you, Melinda.
I saw Phil Miller before I met him. It was at the apartment of Martin Mitchell, the late Martin Mitchell. He and Jean Marie Beaumont gave a reading there. And I met Phil in 2005 after he and Gloria Vando chose one of my poems for A Chance of a Ghost. And I met both of them at the readings. And Phil introduced me. Martin invited me to do a reading at his apartment, and Phil introduced me. And Phil was quoting lines from my poems and saying what this meant and that meant. And I thought, he can't possibly be talking about me. And he later published me in the same. This is Rabbit Ears TV Poems. It's an anthology, which I edited, and NYQ Books published in 2015. And when I started working on it, Phil had left us, and I decided he had to be part of it. And Nancy graciously, and I mentioned that to Martin Mitchell, and he put me in touch with Nancy, and Nancy graciously sent me some poems. And I chose one which Martin coincidentally was advocating for. And I said to Martin, we were watching Wheel of Fortune when the war came on, and he basically said, I told you. So is there time for me to read Phil's poem?
Sure.
It opens the section, each section is called a channel. It opens the channel on TV coverage of war. We were watching Wheel of Fortune when the war came on. The TV was flickering and we were bickering about what show to watch. But in the middle of Wheel of Fortune, suddenly the war came on the tube. The famous TV anchor was interrupting the program in progress with news of the war, and we were watching the instant replay of the first shrill whistle, of the first IBM missile, of the first rat-a-tat-tat of the big guns. We were watching the live camera action of the first news briefing, of the first furrowed brow of the first general. We were watching to see the unquivering chin of the Secretary of Defense and the stern-faced president. We were watching the whole company get on with the show. There on the screen, we were watching all evening, looking into our TV like a window, sitting comfortably in our recliner armchairs, popping some popcorn, cracking a beer, watching the war, hoping to get a peek at the enemy, wishing to see the whites of their eyes, wanting some blood, just a little. Though we knew if watching the war got too much, we could turn the damn thing off with just a touch of the remote control if the going got too rough.
Thank you so much. And so now we have a real treat. We're going to move to Phil's family, and his kids and his grandkids have some things they want to say. And Allison is going to get us started on that.
Hi, everyone. Thank you all for doing this every year. I cannot believe that it's already been 10 years. Honestly, it still feels like it was kind of yesterday. But I just first want to thank everybody. Our family wants to thank everybody, especially the Writers' Place and the Riverfront Reading coming together for Phil's 10-year anniversary. Is that what do you call that, an anniversary? And not just that, but the energy that everybody has put just to put this reading on, and the ones before and the ones after, and how everybody is keeping poetry alive in Kansas City. Because I know that is all that my father has ever hoped for, is that none of that Riverfront wouldn't go away, that the Writers' Place would still be there. And it looks like you guys have done an amazing job keeping that going. With that being said, it's rare, but we have quite a few family members, and in a few minutes we're going to hear 4 of Phil Miller's grandchildren read. I just really quickly want to call out a few of the family members that are online, and I'm going to have to use my list because I'm not 100% sure who everyone is here. So we're going to go by what's listed as I would call you guys out, and I will be skipping the grandkids that are about to read. But first is Brooks. Can you say hi? This is Kevin's son, Brooks.
Hey everybody, how's it going? I'm Brooks, or Phil Brooks Miller.
Yes, yeah, I'm sorry. I should have said that. He is named after Phil. We also have Darren Miller, his son. Can you say hi, Darren? He's got his well, he's there, whether he wants to say hi or not.
Sorry, too many mics to mute and unmute. Hi. Okay, moving on.
Darren's always been has always gone to many of those readings, so I'm sure you all know, you've seen him. We've got that's a reader. Let's see, we've got Meredith that you guys saw earlier. Meredith, Derek, Gwen, maybe Andrew by now. Can you guys say hi?
Hey there.
Hello, thank you for having us.
Andrew's here too. He's just off screen. Just say hello.
Hello.
And then we have Ian, Reese, and then Lily will be reading. So Ian and Reese, can you guys say hi? Those are my kids.
Hello. Hello.
And I think that might be it. So for what we'd like to do just a little bit different is to get that that next generation sharing a few of Phil's poems. And we're going to start with Gwen, who is Meredith and Derek's sibling, or I'm sorry, child. And then we're going to go from there to Hattie, who is Kevin's daughter, and then to Ella, who is also Kevin's daughter, to my daughter, Lily. So So that's how they're going to read. Gwen, would you like to start?
Of course, thank you. For my poem that I'd like to read from my grandfather, I chose Afterwards from the book The Ghost of Every Day. And I like this poem a lot just because I never got the chance really to know my grandfather as well as I'd like to. By the time I was old enough to really understand his writing, he was gone. But when I do my own writing and my own poetry, I somehow still see, I don't know, when I read this, I see elements of the way he saw things. And I don't know, it makes me feel connected to him in a way. And this poem especially emphasizes that. So, sorry, without further ado. The gods are never around. That's what a ghost learns first, visiting the world they made to give themselves a break from eternity. The world we have to haunt. Walking in the cool of too many evenings, they fell in love with their own creations, lingered too long in the garden, touched the perfect mandala of a rose, tasted this apple so red and juicy, and that apple. Eavesdropping on conversations, grown witty after the fall, watching the rises and falls to come, each new cathedral and catastrophe, from Michelangelo to Mussolini, until they forgot the way back up. To where angels shook their heads and called, or fell themselves, their voices, drowned in ragged music, out of tune with the spheres, but down to earth, where ghosts and gods both haunt, where time, that oldest dream, runs on and on, that secret, that golden river, takes us all along. Thank you.
Hi, can everybody hear me? Make sure I'm off mute. Okay, well, yeah, I'm Hattie Miller. My dad's Kevin, so Papa Daddy's son. I just want to say that I did get the chance to go up to Pennsylvania, and I guess after a while I got to go see his house and all the things he collected, and just it was kind of an awesome experience because you kind of got to look into his world too, because I also didn't really get the chance like to fully, I don't know, connect before he passed, but I definitely think that we would have been really good friends. So I'm going to be reading The Picture You Took of Yourself, which I believe he was writing about his mother. So I found this snapshot you took of yourself in a mirror, your camera hidden at the bottom of the picture as you squeezed open the shutter and stared yourself straight in the eye. It's the same face you see every day in every mirror, your own private face. But for me, the symmetry's reversed. Your face sitting at a different tilt, lips curling a strange half smile. Catching sight of yourself, you may have thought, this is the way I look. But what I see is the other side of you staring from a mirror like a window. Behind you, the living room falls back, a shadowy looking glass kingdom, with your full face gazing out like the moon's dark hemisphere brought suddenly to light. Thanks. And then I think Ella will be going next.
Hi, my name's Ella. My father's also Kevin, so I'm Papa Zaddy's granddaughter, and Hattie's too, yeah. So my poem is called Orbiting Grandpa, and it's actually about me and Hattie. I think it might be talking about the time when we were in Pennsylvania, we were spending Christmas with everyone, and I don't know, every Christmas I think about that time, and it just reminds me of him a lot. So here we go. The children are singing, the tree is blinking color, the children call me grandpa, but not to my face. They're moving around me, bright and quick. The two toddlers, Hattie and Ella, sing bits and pieces of Jingle Bells and Rudolph. In unison they sing, we three kings of ornate air, smoking on a rubber cigar. Then they look at me. From their fixed spots, they change every second or two. How do they know how much I love to smoke something right now? I think as I sip a cup of coffee with lots of sugar. They sing and laugh, light years from me, in age anyway, yet close to me too, heavenly bodies, orbiting grandpa, a cooling star, an aging blue, but still blinking and blinking. Thank you.
Is my mic working?
Yep, it is.
Okay. Hi, I'm the daughter. My mom is Allison. I didn't get a chance to know my grandfather much. He passed when I was really young. I don't have much memory of him, but it sucks because we are like really similar in feeling, which sucks because I can relate to him a lot. So a poem that like really relates to me in a lot of ways is Anger. And yeah, feels funny after the heat is going, hollowing in my stomach pit. It still twitches in your leg bones. You can feel it in your toes. You imagine gnomes with curly feet like red peppers dancing tantrums in the firelight of dark caves, beating their tiny hands against their heads and leaping up and down inside your heart.
Thank you all. You all four did a fantastic job. Just really quick, I wanted to mention that Nancy is on this call and she just wanted me to say a couple of words that she just really appreciates everybody coming and doing this every year, and to thank you all for the support that you've given her and our entire family. And with that, I'll give it back to you, Phyllis.
Okay, thank you. And it's just so wonderful to see the kids, and you know, we had seen them growing up, and to see where they are now is just, I have to say, it makes me feel old, but anyway, that's okay. The other thing is, here in Kansas City, I don't know if you guys, other people in Kansas City, we have this wind going on, and it's like a lot of things bumping around out there. So that's making me think of Phil as well. So we're going to move into kind of the open mic. People did sign up to read, and I will let everybody know. I think I'll go ahead if I can get a chance, or if somebody can put the list into the chat, that would be great, so people can see when they come up. But we're going to start with Madeline Hugh, who is the scholarship winner of the Phil Miller Scholarship at Kansas City, Kansas Community College. And she graciously agreed to come to the reading today and read one of Phil's poems. So Madeline, you're up.
Thank you guys so much. This is kind of, I never knew him, but I learned so much about him today. And yeah, so I really appreciate this. It's kind of weird to be like awarded for my writing. But yeah, thank you guys so much. Today I'm going to be reading from the Casablanca Fan, and I'm going to be reading the poem Breakfasting. 1. I am watching her from behind the paper. She thinks every morning I'm always lost in. As she takes in the room, studies the window, measuring, I think, inner space against outer, distancing, planning as in a dream, an escape like the one I've made behind the news, and in a pleasant nod she's grown accustomed to. Now she's pouring me a fresh cup, and I look up, nod pleasantly. She grins, doesn't dream. I know she's halfway across town, at the airport, imagining the land, turning into a cubistic quilt, but I'm smiling behind my fan of newsprint, ready, steady, watching, waiting, prepared for the worst, knowing we're both trapped inside, looking outside. The bird is flying across the yard and then away. 2. I let him in, I think. I let him think I think he's lost in the news, that I'm lost in thought. Listen, brewing coffee, refrigerator whir, that bird twittering at the window. I'm all nerves and notice like a cat. I know he's watching me, that he thinks I'm thinking of escape from inside, outside, to fly away like a bird. When he's not watching, though he wants me, to think he's gone from outside, inside, not where we both stare at each other, unaware, like two strangers met by accident in each other's breakfast nook, he with the news, she with her nose out the window. But when I bring him a fresh cup, pour it unexpectedly, I think that instant, when our eyes meet, might move us in a new direction. But there's his nod and that practiced grin, and I remember he's been watching all the time as well. That two were mysteries skirting, never far enough to lose sight, never close enough to touch. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Melinda Thompson.
Okay. I'm reading from Why We Love Our Cats and Dogs. So it was nice to hear the cat mentioned in the last poem. Okay. Moon Shadow. I love my cat better than all my brothers and sisters. Much better than my parents, though I should be punished for saying this. Okay. Sorry, I thought I was muted again. Much better than my parents, though I should be punished for saying this. It is a fact, and today I found out why, though it shall go to the grave with me. For it is a secret that my cat, whose name is Kitty Kitty to everyone but me, whose real name is Moon Shadow, is just like me. For now she is grown, she's become happy to live alone, angry when she cannot hunt at night for the food she really loves, but insistent still on knowing where she is and where you are, cool as the air that comes in before the beginning and the end of things, like March or October. The way she closes her eyelids slowly at noise, at too much conversation, and loves gray days with sleep pecking the window, where she can sit on the windowsill and watch everyone's coming and going without having to open the door or twitch a whisker at any knock. Watching like God, I suppose, though I'll also keep that to myself. Watching all day and night, as my old grandma used to say, the way the land lies.
Thank you so much. Love his cat poems. Yeah. Next is Gary Lechleiter, who Phil collaborated with quite a bit too.
Okay, I'm glad to be here from New Mexico. We've had our wind too. They're known for wind down here. Phil was one of my mentors, actually, when I started writing. And the last conversation I had with Phil was on my cell phone from General Lee's headquarters in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. And Phil then, was not feeling well, but he was cheerful and he said, I would love to have you come over. It's not that far to drive, but he was feeling so bad. It was just still a very honorable thing to have spoken to somebody I consider a major poet. We're not supposed to use those kind of words, but to me, Phil Miller was. This is from his Ghost of Every Day, just a short one.
And Gary, let me see if we can get you spotlighted before you read the poem.
Oh, you don't want to do that? They'll have to send you that.
Oh, yes, we will.
Oh dear, I see myself now.
Okay, you good? Okay.
Yes.
I just see me, so I don't know what's happened.
Well, this is from the Ghost of Every Day. The Ghost at the Mirror. You wouldn't believe me anyway, the way a watched man looks. Day after day, a man like you, guard down, peeking out the windows at the way the neighbor's daughter parades herself in a turquoise halter top. You're still shaking, your head as you turn away, always acting, gazing into a mirror, cocking your head, smoothing your whiskers, then peering deeper. The looking glass of pool, your face at the bottom, you trying, I remember well, to get to the bottom of that self hanging there, covering one eye, then the other, searching for the bad side and what you'd never believe. A ghost standing and staring too, doing exactly what you do.
Thanks. Thanks so much, Gary. And I forgot you were in New Mexico. Yeah. Okay, so up next is Mark Schroer.
Well, good afternoon. In picking the poem that I was looking at reading today, I noticed that Phil had a bunch of themes that went through a lot of his writing, and one of them was, apart from the ghosts and all of the cat behavior, is the together and separateness of relationships. And in that, he had a lot of poems that were fairly, I think, passionate poems, which Phil was definitely a passionate person. The poem I'm going to read today is from the Casablanca fan. It's called Nearing. How close we come to losing one another in each other, yet how besides ourself we stay. How close we come to winning ourselves over to the other by a split hair, keep from becoming one, growing close enough we swear we talk and look alike, our expressions drawn into the same grin or grimace, our language in near unison, our minds meeting, humming. And when our flesh touches, touch goes beneath the skin, beyond mere sense, and we say we're touched in the heart, though also in our head. Our kisses part our lips as if we swallowed ourselves like oyster from the shell. But a kiss is still a kiss, like two billiard balls that kiss and part, clicking back to fresh but separate positions, which we also must assume. However close we live, the door finally closes as one of us departs, shrinking to a speck, as you did last week, walking quickly down the street, darkening into a shadow, never looking back, leaving me alone waiting for you to re-arrive, for the speck to regain its human size, for your face to come into focus one more time, closing the distance, nearing.
Nice. Thank you, Mark. And our next reader is Carl Bettis.
Okay, I found a poem of Phil's from 1993 in a little zine called Killer Shroom Syndicate. And and many of you know, anyone who's familiar with Phil's poetry knows he had a persona, George Brand. This is George Brand attends a poetry reading. Stumbled into this place the other night. It was stuffy, filled with those little folding chairs, so I thought it was the church meeting. And when I spotted the communion wine, I had myself a cup in a plastic cup, so sour it made my eyes squint. Should have gotten out while the getting was good, but they were playing some slow jazz, and I found a little corner and sat down before everything hushed. And then some guy came out in a tweed coat and blue jeans to read the sermon. But though he droned like a creature, it finally hit me he was reading a poem, except it didn't even rhyme. But it did sound pretty good, though I couldn't understand a goddamn word, being 3 sheets to the wind. And when he finally sat down, everybody clapped, which was lucky because I drifted off. And it was time for intermission, so I got another wine. And when I shook hands with the poet, I gave him some advice, but I don't think he understood. I said a person wants to have a little inspiration, or at least a laugh or two when he sits down to listen. I told him I'd thought of writing down a few of my adventures so I could tell it like it was, but I could never sit down long enough to do it without passing out. He never even smiled, and when he got up to read again, I walked over to my corner and did a little dance, put on my own show, made everybody turn and look at me, though none of them laughed a bit, but looked sober as judges and almost as mean, until I walked over and got one more wine for the road and let them go on with their reading. Let them have, so to speak, the last word. And then I'm also going to read a poem that Wayne Lanter sent. He couldn't be here himself today. I got some guidance from Allard Tenniel, courtesy of Mayor Francis Wagner, on pronouncing the French phrases, but I'm sure I'll butcher them anyway. Café Louis Départ for Philip Miller. A few steps from the Rue du Chat qui Couche, the narrow street in Paris. An early sun lifts on the Seine, waiting to see what the day has in mind. We say goodbye at the Café Les Départ, filled with patrons who, overcome by little time and too much wine, could not bring the night to an end. Some slumped hollow-eyed with morning sickness, placid over a small cup of café au lait. No place to go, no one to take them in. A long row of taxis, idle, slumbers, waiting drivers, smoking gitans, leaf through crumpled pages. Yesterday's Le Monde. The prospect of journey seems far away above the silent mountain. Still intent on having Satan tied, St. Michael brandishes his sword. And while no one is looking, we gather what remains of our brief stay. There will not be another time like this. In keeping with art and progress, someone painted a red umbrella on the narrow street wall over the cat. A man in black holds the umbrella for the cat. A pole and line lead into a basement window out of sight. The cat too waits on the day in some paintings in the Louvre. The cat appears pernicious, malignant. Improbability always embodies mystery. Though not here, not today, I hand you over bags and farewells to a driver headed for De Gaulle. When you disappear in traffic, suspecting it might rain, I unfold the small black umbrella you asked me to hold for a moment while you rearrange your travel bags as if it was the last one you had.
Thank you, Carl. Next, we have Kevin Barth.
All right, hey there. You know, it's somehow fitting that the wind is blowing all over the country. Seattle is, my windows are also rattling, and maybe it's a node to Phil, but because Phil had a lot of wind. I'm going to read something from, I'm digging around trying to come up with a poem. This wasn't what I actually set out to read, but I came across a 30-year-old copy of a little journal that Mary Bodine and I tried to start back in 1991. We got a couple issues out, but Phil was really instrumental in helping us out. And he submitted poetry, and I just dug this up out of my basement, in an old filing cabinet down in the basement. And having just hit 65, I came across this poem, and it's called Getting Old, and I hadn't looked at it in many, many years. So it seemed very fitting to read this today for me, and to reacquainted with this effort from 30 years ago. So this is a poem Phil wrote in, or submitted at least in 1991, called Getting Old. When it first hit me, I blamed the weather. Heat pressing against my temples, a conspiracy of clouds pushing down. Too much whiskey, beer, and wine, I thought, had let the past explode into the present, like a niche open in my brain, until where I was and where I stood then, rubbing my sore eyes, were 2 points, between which stretched a shadow. Too damn much work, I said out loud, muttering like my old granddad always had. Cussing the government, the weather, at clocks that ran too fast or slow, that broke mainsprings, ran down, stopped. When it hit next, I was ready with a quick drink, a dream, another vision of the future. Planned rearrangements of the furniture for decades ahead. What's plotted stays, I said to myself, without moving my lips. Then it hit me. I was still alive. My body, blessed, was betraying me. The me of me that was still intact, my flesh was shedding cells, fresh tissues growing back thinner, but my spirit kept up the same old issues. My mind still pictured the figure of a man I'd become the ghost of. My brain losing bits and pieces of old scenes I'd lived through, refining them to tinctures, sour or sweet or bitter for me to savor on my tongue. As I stood and faced the weather, listening to the sizzle of fall leaves, seeing trees stripped to bare bones, watching everything transformed while it remained the same. And I said to myself, this is how it feels, and spoke in a calm, new voice.
Thanks, Kevin. That was perfect. Okay. Next, we have Sylvia Koffler. And Kevin and Sylvia were also part of the early days of Riverfront. Sylvia is still on the committee.
Yes. And I went to the first Riverfront reading it was either 90 or 91 when it was still at the River Market. And it was Bob Stewart and Brian Daldorf. And so that was the first time. And also I saw Phil, you know, the last time I saw him in Pennsylvania. And I think it was 2008 when he met me in New York, when there was a reading at the Wells Center with Peter Thabit Jones, because I've been going to New York quite a bit. But I wanted to read a poem that I translated for Phil. I did a little project for Phil that one time in 2001. And this is the 20th anniversary one of Thorny Locust, which Carl Bettison and I started. And now it's only yearly, but Greg Field does all the layout now. So, but this is a poem called from a collection, Day After Day, the 7 days of the week. And this is Thursday. And I'm going to read it in English and in German. I translated it for him. So Thursday, thunder rumbles in the distance. Heat lightning like blitzkrieg signals the weekend of fun about to come. As I watch the afternoon dim, hope to get off early, have a little drink, wait out one more night before the games finally begin. The crack of bets, the thud of balls, the object to defy gravity, the object to make us gods. Again, I dream after one last drink, thunder rumbling still in my mind's ears like distant hammers. And here's the German version. Donnerstag. Donner grollt in der Distanz. Hitzeblitz wie Blitzkrieg signalisiert das Wochenende auf überkommenden Ulk, als ich den Nachmittag verdunkeln sehe und hoffe, dass ich früh frei werde, einen Schluck habe, noch eine Nacht ausharre, bevor die Spiele endlich beginnen. Das Krachen der Schläger, der Bums der Bälle, das Objekt der Schwere trotzen, das Objekt, das uns Götter macht. Ich träume wieder nach einem letzten Drink. Donner rollt noch in meine Sinnesohren, wie entfernte Hämmer. This was the one out of the collection that Phil really liked when I read in German for him. Thank you.
Yes, he did. I remember that. Thank you, Sylvia. Joel, you read, did you have another, was that the poem you were going to read, Joel?
Yeah, I jumped the gun, yes.
Oh, no, that's okay. It was great. It was perfect.
Thank you.
And I don't think Randy's here. So our next reader will be Kathy Allen. And we'll get her up on the screen on the spot.
I'm here.
Oh, you are, Randy? Okay, well, Kathy's going, you'll go next.
Yeah, I miss Phil so much. And I'm always saying, all the time, I'm saying, oh, Phil would have said that, or Phil would have, this is what Phil would have done. And he just made life richer. And I mean, he was just a wonderful person. But anyway, I found this poem on the internet. It's one that was published in Poetry Magazine. I could probably just pull any poem out of a book, but I really like this one, so I'm going to go ahead and read it. It's called Fathers. We are here to watch only. We edge up, curious as ghosts. Across the river, under the bridge, this is where we find refuge. We would squeeze the noisy air of every yammer and shriek. Across the river, under the bridge, we sit like schoolboys, smoking. It is our trick, a sleight of tongue, to live without using words. High on a bank, under the tree, we wait and wait for a bite. We love the language of rivers, the rush and gurgle of the waters. We come and go, what can we say? We lean in the wind like trees. The geese are wedging south. We depart. We wave at our sons. We come only to wait and watch. We cannot remember to forgive.
Thanks, Kathy.
You're welcome.
That was wonderful.
Thank you for having me read.
Yes, that's wonderful.
Not just letting me say how much I miss Phil.
I know
And
it.
Nancy, I miss you both.
Yep. Oh. Okay. Next, Randy Ratliff.
Here we are. I really love this event, and I apologize for being tardy, everybody. It's great as usual. I wrote this for Phil Miller's birthday roast on his 50th birthday, and that's more or less its title, On Phil Miller for his 50th birthday roast. First, this opportunity makes me despair. Not only that our honoree deplores surprises, but when unlooked for, that dark day does come, and all of us are stricken black and dumb. I'll have to write from scratch to join his eulogizers, if in fact I'm on the short list in Mr. Baby's lair. But here we are, I am, and there he scowls, as we in turn unburden psychic bowels. I won't be brief, not with his full attention. There are some things that someone ought to mention. We all know him as a tireless supporter of writers, artists, cranked from every quarter, that though work on Riverfront is never done, he slogs on cheerfully, except the money comes up short, or weather breaks in, or readers lose their way at his direction. He carries chairs, watches the street, chills the wine, and lists intently every earnest line. And more, when poets read, he's there, he's everywhere. He must have sat in every folding chair there is. While others dawdle in absentia, he attends and harks the worst dementia and best surprises. They all rate his heeding. You remember, he was at your reading. His students linger, though he disdains disciplery. Their cozy admiration brooks no rivalry. See his teaching, public service more than ample, pales beside the force of his example. Character hard-earned in hardened circumstances, flowering in verse and decade dances. Yet this world of his, a fine and public place, belies the man whose several cats embrace. How came he to be godfather of euphoria? I only know the story from Emporia, where sex and drugs and rock and roll and sex and drugs and sex came in on his heels and left the lexicon in dishabille, where though he dwelt on Congress, he kept apart. He felt, even then, a calling, and in his garret, he would turn from the parade and stare at life until it blinked, until it swore, until he'd plumbed his adolescent store of senses to the bottom. Only union and its lure of wine and girls and talk and tension could pull him out the door to Temple Denniston. Ah, that garden, if you knew the stranger flowers bloomed in those bright rooms in those small hours, the possibilities that filled our boy and others who all continue to distress their mothers. It was earthly paradise out of Gordon, out of Tate, where crazies raved and laughed and drank and ate and learned their discipline, the art and science, and occasionally installed a new appliance. And more, what with Keith and Green, Chuck and Ricky, an odder nest of birds or so picky you'll never meet. Their kinds beyond our reach, except those few like Phil who choose to teach as they were taught, that innovation is a lazy lie without tradition well in hand. You understand. Anyway, deep in winter, all a shiver, a gifted motley led by Keith, yclept Quivira, raided teacher gaggles, grim conferences with spangled, inspired performances of words they wrote and dressed for any stage, and left them wild, the undisputed rage of tedious obligatory muck. Many teachers said they came unstuck at all that word-slung dazzle and delight, newly determined that their kids would write. Phil was there, Ah, was he? If you knew, he came in like a cyclone. Whoo! And learned on every trip after merry trip his own peculiar brand of showmanship. But onward, to the man who sought his place and fell victim to a daily taste he managed best as he could, until he knew it had him as it would. He always was the better sort of drunk who never sipped but that he thunk, and never thunk but pulled another stitch, unraveling the nerve behind the itch we often fear to scratch, the palpitation hunched between our gloom and brief elation. He never sipped but that he thunk, and never thunk but pulled another stitch, unraveling the nerve behind the itch we often fear to scratch, the palpitation hunched between our gloom and brief elation. That little death and his last stand gave us all far more than old George Grand. And for his health and life, I rather fancy we each should plant a kiss on lovely Nancy, though I'm content he'll take her off and purr how many laurel leaves belong to her. Their house tree swamped, the tidy blocks disgrace. The neighbors groaned, oh, that's that writer's place. Draws friends to feasts of reason, curry, chili, where for hours the sublime flirts with the silly. First a poem, then a story, then a joke, and laughter streams and billows through the smoke. Phil waves you to your drink, and then he'll sniff it, smile his licked lips, and wonder if it tastes the same. Grin wickedly. Don't be upset. So long as he's supplied with chocolate, cherry Coke, and coffee, or his Pennsylvania toffee, he'll be fine. In this we are particularly close. I've often drained his wine and boned his roast. I beg your pardon. I should say how I admire his garden. Truly, though, we're close as click and clack. He'd gladly take this shirt right off my back. And though I'd love to list his many friends, I have some sympathy for your poor ends. So here comes mine. He's a friend, wears graciously his manner so plebeian, through circuses of rank vaguely Arabian. He is a man, is what one ought to be, approaching the great age of his curmudgeonry, and with love we'll move him with world enough and time, if not to giggle, yet we will make him rhyme. Thank you very much for letting me read that again.
Thank you, Randy. That was great, even with the technology glitch. So
Thanks, just the same.
So you're okay. We would forgive you for being late.
Thank you. Thank you. I love this thing. Love you
No
guys.
problem. Okay, so we got a few more readers, and our next reader is Greg Field.
Okay, this is the last poem in the collection, in Phil's collection, titled Branches Snapping. It's called If Endings Were Beginnings. If endings were reversed as in a mirror and became beginnings, the kiss of departing lovers would come first, then rapture. After sunset, suddenly sunrise, and the way back home would lead toward fresh salad days. Toothless and wrinkled, we would grow to wrinkled, toothless infancy, and above us the moon would wane, then wax, night always younger, you more beautiful as years would accumulate, dissolve, and goblets at their dregs would refill, sparkling to their brims, and always before anything could run its course, the mirror would blink back, the loop would close, and the return to Eden would be by way of that wicked tree. First slavery, then freedom, first death, then life.
Thank you, Greg. That's one of my favorite poems, and it gives me chills. Thank you for reading that. And last but not least, we have Derek Robertson, who is Phil's son-in-law. So very happy to have him read.
Can you guys hear me okay? This is my first time setting up. I got a new office space, so a lot of this stuff has been disconnected for me. Am I coming through? Yep, okay. I didn't know I was going to be last. I thought I was almost also mandatory to read today. So I almost feel bad for taking up the time. However, Phil's poetry meant a lot to me, as Phil did, of course. And he's gone way too soon. I just found him more interesting every year, and I wish I could have gotten more time with him. And I read this, and if I could take a little more time than I may be allotted, I had a backup poem in case somebody read the one I had picked, because I noticed ghost has been a theme throughout everybody's reading today. So this is one I read actually at Phil's memorial, and I still love. And it's called The Ghost Returns to the Day After His Death. But I want to read another one of Phil's after, because it ends on a happier note. And I think Phil will get a little bummed out if we were just going on and on about ghosts all day. So in my memory of him anyway, because I know he liked to laugh. Anyway, The Ghost Returns to the Day After His Death. The very day I passed hardly matters now, that sense of relief all around. I can see it in my own cooled eyes, staring finally at nothing in particular among the particulars around me. Not at the sad eyes drying, coming back into focus, but at the furniture. The old ladder back, the wing chair, the claw-legged Davenport, all those old sticks and the knickknacks, the brass monkeys hanging tail by tail, the antique mirror, the Roseville vase, things that I came back to see the very next day, my first day over here, among the neophytes standing wide-eyed as if we'd seen the face of God. Fat chance, I'll tell you that much. But I couldn't wait to watch. No, not my own funeral, what a drag. But the hours marched by without me, and the people too. I not even cold, and they already back at it. I mean living. There's my old wife, still a bit teary, but already boxing up a few of my shirts and shoes for the Salvation Army. You should be keeping busy, someone told her, and she is. She is. I watch her as she rearranges the world she's come back to on this day after I took my powder.
Oh, you kind of got one on mute. Sorry.
Well, that's weird.
There you go. Sorry.
I unmuted you.
Oh, okay. How far back?
Just about 2 sentences worth.
Okay, I'm going to go back to this spot and hope this is where we were. There's my old wife, still a bit teary, but already boxing up a few of my shirts and my shoes for the Salvation Army. You should be keeping busy, someone told her, and she is. She is. I watch her as she rearranges the world she's come back to on this day after I took my powder. It's that world I will watch forever. You might call it haunting should you see me standing outside, staring inside at my own living room, and on my hands, all the time in the world. And this one, this is the one, I've always loved this poem. And I tell my friends when I bring up Phil, I tell them about this poem because it's hilarious. This is called Fun with Two Ends. Today I want to have fun. Today I do not want to take myself seriously or anything else for that matter. Today I plan to have fun. Today I will not think about how peaceful, natural I would look in my casket. Maybe a nice bronze one if I had not willed my body to a medical center, given my body, as my mother before me, to a lab for scientific experiments to help the betterment of the human race. No, today, as I sit looking at the end of the year, I will concentrate on having fun. Fun with two N's, F-U-N-N, like the personalized license plate I saw yesterday on the back of some guy's RV, the color of October leaves. I'm watching slowly glide one by one to earth, making the ground turn vermilion. That guy must have decided to have fun, even if he had to misspell it. To have it stuck on the back of his RV to tell the world that he and fun with two N's were one. Just as today, I'm going to become one with fun, Although I can't help wondering what might happen if someone like me out trying to have fun came upon this big orange oversized van, and while attempting to read its personalized license plate with those two damned ends accidentally rammed into the back, causing, as one on TV, a big orange fireball. The same color as the leaves I'm watching fall and fall, which wouldn't be much fun for us, yet might look like the fun. Thousands of people come home flipping on TV when after a hard day's work, they don't want to think much about the end of the day or the year or their own lives, but still think of it. It's fun to watch explosions of orange and red before heading to bed. I wonder if that guy in the RV was trying to spell funny and just gave up, which is not what I'm going to do. Get happy, that's what my old man always said, tight as a tick, of course. And though he had a bronze casket, he didn't look peaceful or natural lying there. Let's get happy, he would say. And since he owned no RV or TV, he just turned on something red hot and jazzy on the old phonograph to get his mind off of the same things I'm determined to ignore today, because RV or no RV, casket or no casket, green leaves or orange, betterment of the human race or to hell with it today. Even if it kills me, today I'm going to have fun.
Yay, that's a classic.
I love that poem. That
Yeah,
makes me
it's
so
a
happy.
classic. And I misspoke. We have one more person who wants to say something, and I didn't get him on the list, and that would be Stan Banks.
Hey, everybody. First of all, I want to say thank you to the Phil Miller family, dear Nancy, and all the gang from old. We're still young, by the way. You know, Phil was a part of some of the real good times in my life. We did a couple of radio interviews for KKFI. I gave my National Endowment for the Arts Fellowship grant premiere reading at the River Market Reading with Riverfront series, and that was a great time. And of course, our big project together was Miss C's on 20th and Grand. I know Phyllis and the gang will remember that one. Used to get all kind of write-ups, and Phil's name got in the paper quite a bit. He covered for me hosting all the time.
And the soul food was so good.
And the food, that's right, and the food. So I wrote this poem for him, and forgive me because when the invitations went out, classes started at my university, so I've been under it a little bit. So this is a poem for Phil, not long, called The Poet's Poet for Phil Miller. A razor-rashed, middle-aged, true believer of those with barred hearts, became a literary giant, known as an honorable friend who organized writers and nurtured anyone who wanted to develop their unique voice, had a fire in his belly that added an extra crackle to his words. He left us with a truism. When it comes to the pursuit of beloved words, light a fire in every poem and always account for your own smoke and guts. For Phil Miller. Thank you all. I've enjoyed everyone. Y'all been great.
Thank you. Thanks, Stan. What a nice way to end the reading with that poem.
Thank you.
So thank you, everybody. This was just wonderful. It was wonderful to hear all these poems and to see everybody from New York to New Mexico to California. And of course, the whole Kansas City crew are here. So thank you so much. And before we head out, and we can stay if you'd like to, if you want to visit a little bit with we want to announce the basket winners. We had the Phil Miller tribute baskets, and Allison, you wanted to show the baskets, is that correct?
Yeah, I can show them if you want to call out what they are. Let me.
Okay. And in these baskets, we have books, we have his bric-a-brac and his artwork.
Okay, so start with, okay, let me Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, we can. Is that,
Okay.
That's too much muchness?
This is too much muchness.
All right, Eve, that's yours. The Fair to Midland, Mary Frances got 2 baskets.
Sorry,
Fair
my dogs are
Fair
freaking out.
to Midland and Hell in a Handbasket.
Okay, so Fair to Midland is this one. And then Hell in a Handbasket is this one.
And then I got Hey Kiddo. So
Phyllis got Hey Kiddo, and that would be this one.
The best one.
Thank you guys so much for all of your donations. I forgot to mention that. This is going to a great place, helping people who want to get who want to become English teachers, writers, poets, and all the fancy stuff. So thank you guys for donating. I appreciate it.
Okay. You can unmute yourself and Allison we can go to full screen when Allison's done sharing.
You didn't see it? You guys can't see the screens?
Yeah, if you can stop the share. Yeah, we got to
Oh
see
yeah,
it.
that's what I'm trying to do. Okay, good. I wanted to make sure I didn't misunderstand. So sorry.
No, that's good. So people like to stick around and chit chat. That's fine for a little bit. So
I just wanted to say thank you to you guys again. I do have to go to a choir concert, but it was an honor to be here and see what an impact you had on your guys' lives. I loved all the readings. So thank you guys again.
and congratulations to you, Madeline, and good luck with your studies.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.